Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Griffin, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. A marriage doesn't fall apart in one night. It falls apart one decision at a time. Mine lasted 4 years before I realized I was the only one still fighting for it. Amanda and I had built a good life. We owned a house in a quiet neighborhood outside the city. I had recently been promoted to operations manager at a regional logistics company where I'd worked for nearly a decade. The hours were long, but I was proud of what I provided. I thought we were working toward the same future. For a while, it felt that way. Then, Amanda became friends with a woman from her office named Sarah. At first, I didn't think much of it. "We're just getting dinner after work," Amanda told me one evening while grabbing her purse. "Again?" I asked. She shrugged. "We've got a lot to talk about." One dinner became weekly wine nights. Wine nights became networking events. Then came weekend outings that somehow always lasted until after midnight. One Friday, I came home early with steaks from Amanda's favorite butcher shop. "I thought we'd cook together," I said, setting the bags on the counter. She barely looked up from her phone. "I can't. Sarah already made plans. You've seen Sarah 4 times this week. And? And your husband hasn't had one dinner with you." Amanda sighed, annoyed. "Griffin, do we seriously have to do this every time I leave the house? I don't care about you leaving the house. I care that you'd rather spend time with everyone else." She zipped up a small overnight bag. "It's one night. You packed a bag for one night?" She froze for half a second before smiling. "Sarah wants to hit the spa tomorrow morning. I'm staying at her place." Something about the answer felt rehearsed. She walked outside, opened the trunk of her car, and looked around before changing into a much tighter dress she'd hidden inside a garment bag. She didn't know I was watching through the front window. I didn't call after her. I didn't start another argument. I simply watched her drive away. Right then, I stopped asking questions. I decided it was time to start finding answers. The house stayed quiet that night. Amanda didn't come home until almost 1 in the morning. I was sitting in the living room with the television on low when I heard her pull into the driveway. She walked in carrying the same overnight bag, but the dress she had left in was gone. She had changed back into jeans and a sweatshirt. "You waited up?" she asked. "I couldn't sleep." She leaned over and kissed my cheek. The perfume she wore wasn't one I'd ever bought her. It was stronger, expensive, and completely unfamiliar. "I thought you were staying at Sarah's," I said. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "The plans changed. Sarah wasn't feeling well, so we skipped the sleepover." "What about the spa?" "We canceled it. Maybe next weekend." I nodded once. "Sounds like a wasted trip." She forced a small smile. "Yeah, I guess." Then she headed upstairs without another word. The next afternoon, I started a load of laundry while Amanda was grocery shopping. As I emptied her jacket pockets, a plastic hotel key card slid onto the floor. I picked it up. It belonged to a luxury hotel on the other side of town. Before doing anything else, I took out my phone and photographed both sides of the card. Then I placed it on the kitchen island and waited. When Amanda got home, I nodded toward it. "You forgot something." She looked at the card, and for just a second, all the color left her face. Then she laughed. "Oh, that. Sarah had a work conference there last week. I must have picked it up by accident." I folded my arms. "Interesting. What?" "That hotel is 40 minutes from your office." She hesitated. "The conference wasn't near work." "You just said it was." Amanda's expression hardened. "Are you interrogating me now?" "No, I'm giving you a chance to explain." "I already did." She grabbed the key card and tossed it into the trash. "It's just plastic, Griffin. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I held her gaze for another second. "Maybe?" Then I walked away. The following afternoon, I drove to that hotel. The receptionist politely refused to discuss guests, which I expected. As I walked back outside, I noticed something odd. Luxury cars kept arriving. Couples stepped out together, dressed far too formally for a Sunday afternoon. They all entered through the same private side entrance. I stood there for a moment, watching. I still didn't know what Amanda was hiding. But I knew one thing. She hadn't been telling me the truth. I didn't confront Amanda after the hotel. If she wanted to keep lying, I'd let her. The more comfortable she felt, the more likely she was to make a mistake. 3 days later, she made one. "I'm going away this weekend," she said over breakfast. "Sarah booked us a wellness retreat. No phones, just massages, yoga, and relaxing." I looked up from my coffee. "Where?" She smiled. Some private place outside the city. I don't remember the name. You don't remember where you're spending the weekend? She laughed. Sarah handled everything. I nodded. Have fun. She looked surprised that I didn't argue. That afternoon, while she was packing, I slipped a small GPS tracker into the side pocket of her gym bag. It wasn't something I bought for this. We'd used it before while traveling to keep track of luggage. The next morning, Amanda kissed me on the cheek. Don't work too hard. I won't. As soon as she drove away, I opened the tracking app and followed the signal from a distance. I stayed several cars behind the whole drive. She never looked in her mirrors long enough to notice me. Nearly an hour later, she turned onto a private road surrounded by tall trees. I kept going until I found a gravel turnout just before the entrance. From there, I had a clear view of the front gate without getting close enough to draw attention. A few minutes later, Amanda pulled into the estate. Sarah climbed out first. Amanda followed a second later. A man in a dark suit walked over with a smile like he'd been expecting them. He hugged Sarah. Then he wrapped one arm around Amanda. She leaned in and kissed him on the mouth without the slightest hesitation. I raised my phone and took several photos from where I stood on the public road. Neither of them noticed me. They disappeared inside the estate together. I stayed long enough to photograph more guests arriving before returning to my truck. Back home, I searched the property's address. It wasn't a resort. It wasn't a retreat. Buried in an online forum, I found exactly what I was looking for. The estate hosted invitation-only swingers parties every month. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the photos one more time. Amanda hadn't crossed a line by accident. She'd driven straight to it. And now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I didn't waste time. The following Monday, I met with a licensed private investigator named Patrick. I handed him the photos from the estate and the address. I don't need guesses, I told him. I need facts. Patrick looked through the pictures without saying much. If she's been there once, he said, there's a good chance it wasn't her first time. Find out. He nodded. You'll have your answers. For the next 10 days, I lived like everything was normal. Amanda came home smiling. She asked about my day. We ate dinner together. She even suggested we start planning a vacation. You've been working too much, she said one evening. We should get away. I looked at her. Maybe. She smiled, completely unaware that I already knew where she'd been getting away. A week later, Patrick called. I've got everything. We met at his office that afternoon. He slid a thick folder across the desk. Inside were photographs, dates, receipts, and surveillance notes. Amanda hadn't attended just one swingers party. She'd been going for nearly 8 months. The so-called girls' nights, the overnight retreats, the networking dinners. Most of them ended at the same estate or nearby hotels. Patrick pointed to another photograph. The woman with your wife is Sarah. According to our investigation, she's the one who introduced Amanda to the group. There was more. Amanda had been paying membership fees through a separate online account she'd opened without telling me. Nothing illegal, just carefully hidden. I closed the folder. That's enough. Patrick studied me. You want us to keep digging? I shook my head. No, I already have the truth. The next stop was a divorce attorney. Her name was Diane Collins. She reviewed everything quietly before looking at me. You've done the smart thing by collecting evidence first, she said. Don't confront her yet. How long? 1 more week? For what? We secure financial records, protect your assets, and make sure there are no surprises. Once we file, she'll have very little room to create problems. That made sense. I wasn't interested in yelling. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in walking away on my terms. So I went home. Amanda was making dinner. She smiled as I walked through the door. Perfect timing, she said. Your favorite. I smiled back. Looks good. She thought she was living 2 separate lives. She had no idea both of them were about to collide. The following Friday, Amanda walked into the kitchen carrying another overnight bag. Company leadership retreat, she said. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. I looked up from the newspaper. Where's this one? She shrugged. Some conference center. Sarah booked everything. Of course she did. Amanda laughed like it was an ordinary conversation. You've been surprisingly relaxed lately. I've had time to think. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and headed for the door. See you tomorrow. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I picked up my phone. Patrick answered on the second ring. She's moving. I know, I said. Stay on her. I'll call when it's done. While Amanda drove toward another swingers party, I spent the evening doing something far more productive. I moved every document Diane had told me to protect into a safe deposit box. I opened a new bank account in my name alone. I changed the passwords on every account that belonged solely to me. Then I packed my clothes, tools, family photographs, and everything I'd brought into the marriage before Amanda ever entered my life. Around midnight, Patrick called. "It's confirmed." He sent me several high-resolution photographs and 2 short videos. Amanda wasn't just attending the party. She was greeting people like she'd been part of the group for years. One picture showed her holding another man's hand as they walked toward the estate. Another showed her kissing him before disappearing inside. The evidence was complete. The next morning, Amanda came home carrying coffee and pastries. She walked through the front door smiling. "I brought breakfast." "That's thoughtful." She set the bag on the counter. The retreat was exhausting. "I bet." She laughed. "You don't believe me?" I met her eyes. "It doesn't matter what I believe." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "You'll find out soon enough." I grabbed my truck keys. "I've got a few things to take care of." That afternoon, while Amanda sat in her office pretending to work, a process server walked in and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Clipped to the back were several photographs. The first showed her kissing another man outside the estate. The second showed her walking through the front gate. The third showed her holding his hand. Diane called me 20 minutes later. She was served. And, according to the process server, she looked at the photos, sat down, and didn't say a word. I nodded once. For the first time in months, Amanda had run out of lies. I was already loading the last box into my truck when Amanda's car came flying into the driveway. She hit the brakes so hard the tires let out a sharp screech before the car came to a stop. She jumped out and slammed the car door so hard the sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. "Griffin!" she shouted as she stormed toward me, the divorce papers clutched in one hand. "What is this?" I closed the tailgate before answering. "You already know." Her face was pale. "You had me followed?" "I had the truth verified." She threw the papers onto the driveway. "This isn't what it looks like." I looked at the photographs scattered across the concrete. "It looks exactly like you kissing another man before walking into a swingers party." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then she tried another approach. "Sarah talked me into it." "I didn't marry Sarah. It only happened a few times." I shook my head. "No, it happened for 8 months." She stared at me. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot more than you think." Amanda folded her arms. "We never talked about what I needed." I asked. "You lied. You were always working. I was building our future. You weren't around. And your answer was to build another life behind my back?" She looked away. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she took a slow breath. "I made a mistake." I met her eyes. "No." She frowned. "A mistake happens once." I pointed toward the photographs. "That took planning. Secret accounts, fake business trips, fake retreats, hotel rooms, monthly parties." Her shoulders dropped. "I can stop." "I know." She looked hopeful. "Then why are you still leaving?" "Because I'm not divorcing you over one night." I picked up the divorce papers and handed them back to her. "I'm divorcing you because every time you walked out that door, you made another choice." Tears formed in her eyes, but I didn't react. She reached for my arm. "Please, let's go to counseling." I stepped back. "You should have wanted counseling before you started living like you were single." She wiped her face. "I never thought you'd actually leave." "I know." That was the most honest thing she'd said all day. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. Amanda stood in the driveway watching me pull away. She didn't chase the truck. She didn't scream. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing left to say. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Diane had prepared everything before Amanda even knew I was leaving. The evidence spoke for itself, and there wasn't much room for arguments. We sold the house, divided what the law required, and signed the final papers a few months later. Amanda didn't take it well. At first, she tried telling people I had become distant and jealous. A couple of mutual friends called me, wanting to hear my side. I kept it simple. "If you really want to know why the marriage ended, I'll show you." The few people who asked received copies of the photographs and the timeline Patrick had helped put together. I didn't send them around to embarrass Amanda. I only answered questions with facts. After that, the phone stopped ringing. Word spread quickly. Not long afterward, Sarah's husband uncovered the truth about her involvement. Their marriage ended too. From what I heard, several couples connected to that private group split up over the following months. The same people who had promised to keep each other's secrets suddenly disappeared when real consequences arrived. Amanda lost more than our marriage. She lost the friends she thought would always protect her. One by one, they drifted away, each trying to save their own reputation. As for me, I finally had peace. I accepted another promotion at work, bought a smaller house closer to the office, and settled into a routine that didn't depend on wondering where my wife was every weekend. For the first time in a long while, my life felt steady again. Almost a year after the divorce became final, my phone buzzed with a number I still recognized. It was Amanda. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Her voice was quiet. "I know I don't deserve your time," she said. "But could we meet just once? I'm not asking you to come back. I just need to say something face to face." I thought about it for a moment. Then I gave her the name of a small coffee shop across town. "One conversation," I said. "That's all." When I hung up, I wasn't wondering what she was going to say. I was wondering why it had taken her a year to finally tell the truth. The next afternoon, I walked into the coffee shop a few minutes early. I took a seat by the window. A few minutes later, Amanda came through the door. She looked different, not because of her clothes or her hair, but because the confidence she used to carry so easily was gone. She looked like someone who had spent a long time thinking about the choices that brought her there. She sat across from me. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You said you wanted to talk." She nodded slowly. I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked me in the eye. "I owe you an apology, a real one." I didn't interrupt. "I blamed Sarah. I blamed my job. I even blamed you for working too much. None of that was true." "No," I said. "It wasn't." She took a deep breath. "The truth is, I liked the excitement. I liked getting attention from people who didn't know me. I kept telling myself it wasn't hurting anyone because you didn't know. Every lie made the next one easier. Eventually, I wasn't protecting our marriage anymore. I was just protecting the secret." That was the first completely honest thing I'd heard from her in a long time. "I figured that out," I said. She looked down at her coffee. "If I could go back, I'd make different choices." "I believe you." Her eyes lifted toward mine, and for a second, I could see a little hope. "But believing you doesn't change what happened." The hope disappeared. "I know." I stood up and reached for my jacket. "I accept your apology, Amanda." She looked surprised. "You do?" "I do. Carrying anger around forever doesn't help me." She gave a small, grateful nod. "But accepting your apology isn't the same as forgetting what you did. And it definitely isn't a reason to start over." She closed her eyes for a moment before quietly saying, "I understand. I think you finally do." I left enough cash on the table to cover my coffee and walked toward the door. This time, she didn't ask me to stay. She didn't ask for another chance. She knew there wasn't one. People sometimes ask me if my marriage ended because my wife went to a swingers party behind my back. They're wrong. My marriage ended long before that. It ended the day Amanda decided I deserved lies instead of honesty. The swingers party was simply the moment the truth became impossible to hide. She chose that life. I chose mine. Looking back, filing for divorce wasn't the day I lost my wife. It was the day I took my life back. Thank you for watching.